Hey everybody, it's low carb and keto nutrition specialist Amy Berger bringing you keto without the crazy. This video is for anyone out there who classifies themselves as a slow loser. Not that I think you're a loser. You know what I mean. Your weight loss is very, very slow, maddeningly slow, frustratingly slow. And I say that under the assumption that you are actually sticking to keto. You are really, truly doing it. You're not messing around. You're not, having a little bit of carbs here and there once in a while. You are well and truly, faithfully sticking to a very, very strict ketogenic diet. And you have a relatively substantial amount of weight to lose. I'm not talking about the last 5 or 8 or even 10 pounds. We're talking about larger individuals. And I'm also going to assume you do not have a thyroid issue. I'm writing my 4th book right now. It is about thyroid. It's not a keto book. It's going to be a thyroid book. In the meantime, if you have my book, The Stall Slayer, stallslayer.com, chapter 6, the entire chapter is about thyroid. And I will also link to a video in the notes here, probably my most important, most educational video I've ever done on thyroid. So, assuming that you don't have a thyroid problem, because that will definitely mess with weight loss, find out why on my book. When people have a really, really difficult time losing weight, and if a client comes to me and they're in this situation, and again, I am trusting that they are being honest with me. When they tell me what they typically eat, I believe them. They're not hiding anything from me. And it's a mystery. It's like, well, I don't know. You're doing everything right here, right? People tend to want to jump to various possibilities. Should I eliminate dairy? Do you think it's my diet soda holding things up? Is it this stevia in my soda? Do I have to cut this out? What if I have a food sensitivity? What about that? Yeah, and any of those things are possible, but maybe that's not the first place we need to go. Because it's like, what more can I do? What else do I need to do? Do I need to fast? Do I need to exercise? Do I need to do all this other stuff? Like, what do I need to do? But more often it's people trying to identify 5 more things they need to pick out of their diet. I am going to share with you a story that I heard last weekend at an event that I was at in Greensboro, North Carolina, with my dear in real life friend IRL, Casey Durango from Go Keto with Casey, CaseyDurango.com. She put on a lovely event there, and Dr. Westman was there, and Jackie Eberstein was there. Many of you have heard me mention Jackie Eberstein in the past, but since hopefully new people are always coming to the channel, and many of you old timers, maybe you missed videos where I mentioned her. Jackie Eberstein worked with Dr. Robert Atkins, the late great Robert Atkins, God rest his soul. She worked with him for over 30 years. So she, like beginning in the 1970s. So in my opinion, and she's a nurse, she's a registered nurse. In my opinion, Jackie Eberstein has more clinical experience helping real world patients, real world people from all walks of life with the ketogenic diet than just about anybody on the planet Earth. And I even include Stephen Phinney in that, Dr. Phinney. Most of us have Dr. Phinney, MD, PhD on a pedestal, as well we should. But from what I'm told, and he is a brilliant, brilliant researcher, brilliant scientist, but from what I'm told, he does not have a whole ton of clinical experience with patients. A lot of people go to medical school and don't actually go into clinical work. They go into research, they go into, other stuff. So, point is, I'm just trying to establish her credibility, which is enormous. So, she told a story at this event that I knew I needed to share with my fans and followers, and it was so useful for me to hear as somebody who works with people, and I'll get to that at the end. Now, But before I start this, let me say that many of you have heard me talk about the situation where people's blood sugar, the blood glucose, is normal, but the insulin is sky high, right? In fact, the blood sugar is normal because the insulin is sky high. That insulin is keeping the blood sugar in check, right? And that's whether we're talking about a fasting blood glucose level, the hemoglobin A1C, or a response to an oral glucose tolerance test. And I'm sure most of you know, but for those of you who don't, an oral glucose tolerance test, or OGTT, because oral glucose tolerance test is a real mouthful to say, the OGTT is where you go to a lab or your doctor's office and you drink liquid glucose. And it's usually 75 grams, I think sometimes it's 100, and they measure your blood sugar then at intervals, usually 30 minutes after, 60 minutes after, maybe 90 minutes, and 2 hours. So you can see how high is your blood sugar going after that liquid glucose and how long does it take to come back down. And so that's great. That offers a lot of information, but what about the insulin? We have no idea. The glucose level at any one time says nothing about insulin. And when insulin is chronically high, even when the blood sugar is normal, the chronically high insulin all by itself is a major driver of a very long list of chronic metabolic disease. Non-alcoholic fatty liver, PCOS, gout, hypertension. You can read my book, The Alzheimer's Antidote. It's a massive risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. All kinds of stuff happened with this. And because insulin, and I will get to Jackie's story soon, I promise, but you need this starter information. The main job of insulin is not to lower your blood sugar. I will say that again for those of you for whom that just blew your mind. The main function of insulin is not to lower your blood sugar. Insulin has approximately 47 other roles that it plays in your body, one of the biggest of which is inhibiting lipolysis. Lipolysis is the breakdown of fat. Lipo meaning fat, like liposuction. Lysis means breaking apart. So insulin inhibits lipolysis. Insulin basically stops the burning of fat, because if you have lots of carbs coming in, what don't you need to burn when you've got a bunch of glucose in the blood? You don't need to be burning fat because you've got plenty of glucose on board. So insulin does you a favor, like, hey, no, fat cell, go ahead and don't release any of that fat because Amy's busy burning all this glucose here instead. So if your bottom line, if your insulin is high, it impairs your body's ability to release and burn fat. So why does any of that matter? Well, Dr. Atkins, this is the book that got me started on keto, Dr. Atkins' New Diet Revolution. This is the book that was Amy's entree into the low-carb keto world. This book is the 1999 version, well, 92, 99 version, but the first edition was in 1972. And I first read this book about 20 years ago when I was in college. And, well, God, it's more than 20, more like 22, 23 years ago at this point. Okay, anyway. I reread it 3 years ago. I reread this book in fall 2019. And I was stunned at how far ahead of his time he was. So far ahead of his time. Yes, he was world famous for the weight loss and the Atkins diet. He was a brilliant clinician, like just a brilliant thinker. He was one of the very, very few people at the time who, when he did the glucose tolerance test in his patients, they didn't just do glucose. They also did insulin. So Dr. Atkins and Jackie and their clinic staff could identify patients in whom the blood sugar was normal, but the insulin was really high. And it didn't really matter because the end result was the same. They were going to get put on a very low carb diet, but at least they could know what they were dealing with. So here's the good part. Well, I hope all that was good and useful, but she said they had two patients, two guys. I think they were brothers, but I might be remembering that wrong. Both over 400 pounds. So what is that? Over 200 kilos, however much that is. very, very large guys. And they were not diabetic. So their blood sugar was normal, right? Their A1C was normal because they were not diabetic. But they come to the clinic for the first time, they get all the blood work evaluated, and they do the glucose test with the insulin. And in the US, they might use different units overseas, but in the US, the the cutoff point for fasting insulin is either 20 or 25 or 24 micro international units per milliliter, or whatever it is, 20 or 25. Now, most of us in the low carb keto world think that's way too high. We like to see it below 10. Some people say below 5 is even better. I'm not sure about that yet, but I do think for fasting insulin, you want to be under 10. But let's just say the conventional lab range is acceptable. So let's say 20 or 25 for fasting is normal. It's totally expected that if you drink the liquid glucose, not only is the glucose going to go up, your insulin will go up too, of course. Like, that is to be expected. But it's not supposed to go up super, super, super high and stay super high for many, many hours, right? It's supposed to go to like an expected type of level and come back down at a normal rate. So they do this test on these two guys, and I'm telling you, I have to double check with Jackie that she didn't misspeak and mean to say blood glucose. I'm pretty sure she said insulin, because that's why this was such a shock. Now remember, the normal cutoff, now we're talking about the fasting level still, but 20 or 25. These guys did the liquid glucose test. Their insulin went into the 600s. Insert head exploding emoji. Now again, I need to double check with her and check that she did not misspeak, because 600 would not shock me for glucose. 600 for insulin is crazy, but let's take her at her word. So, oh my goodness, holy moly. That totally explains why these guys are so large, but they're not diabetic. They are pumping out so much insulin, and that insulin is still effective for keeping the blood sugar normal. And that insulin is really effective for preventing those guys' bodies from being able to release fat, right? That's, if you want to burn fat, like if you want to lose weight, that really means losing fat, right? And if you want to lose fat, you have to burn fat. You can't burn fat if you're so busy burning carbs, and you can't burn fat if insulin is telling your fat cells not to release the fat. If you want to burn that fat, it first has to come out of the fat cell and be transported somewhere else to be metabolized. Okay, fine. So, great. They get put on the very strict Atkins induction diet, just like everybody else did mostly. And they went back, a few weeks later, I think, and they had lost a little bit of weight. A little bit, but not that much. And when you start off that heavy, if you start off over 400 pounds and you do a very, very strict keto diet, that fat should fall off of you almost by accident at first, right? The bigger you are, the more quickly and easily it comes off at first, like almost effortlessly, almost without you even trying. The closer you get to goal, the harder it is. But so they did lose a little bit of weight, nowhere near as much as Jackie would have expected them to lose in that time. And it was a mystery. They swore, like, we are not lying to you. We're sticking to the diet. We are totally doing it 100%. Like, we're doing it. I don't know. And she trusted them. And there was a deli right down the street from the Atkins Center in New York City. And she said to them, and I have to assume they were fasted because they probably went there to get some blood work done. And so she said, let's do this. She measured the fasting glucose and fasting insulin. Okay, got those. She told them, go down to the deli and I want you to order bacon and eggs and get a cup of coffee with a little splash of cream, and then come back to the center. They did. They went. They go to the deli. They get the bacon and eggs, the coffee with cream. Basically a breakfast, a meal any of us would eat perfectly fine. Any, a very, very low carbohydrate meal, a meal that you would not expect to really do anything to your glucose or insulin, like very, very little, And now to be clear, I forgot to say earlier, when you do a glucose tolerance test with or without insulin, you expect it to rise. Like that's normal. You just don't expect it to skyrocket and stay high forever. Like, so a little bit of rise, sure. So they come back to the clinic and she had them, she tested the blood sugar and insulin after the meal. So it was like it was a glucose and insulin sort of tolerance test based on a very, very low carb ketogenic meal rather than on liquid glucose. She wanted to see, okay, these guys, sorry, my hair, these guys have been sticking to the diet. I'm trusting that they are telling me the truth. Why aren't they losing weight? Or why have they lost so little? Why isn't this working better? So the insulin again was in the 300s. So guess what though? 300s is way better than 600s, right? So they actually were doing really well. The insulin was coming down. Good things were happening, but they were so severely insulin resistant. Their insulin was so high to begin with that even after a few weeks, it had come down a lot, but it was still too high for these guys to be able to release fat that much more quickly. So, what does this have to do with any of you out there that consider yourself a slow loser? These guys were actually doing fine. The diet was working. It was actually working great. It's just that they had started from a position of being so far off the map, metabolically speaking, that it was just going to take so much longer for them to right the ship. And I'm mixing metaphors here, but like it was just going to take them so much longer than for a lot of other people. So how many of you out there might this describe? And I'm not telling you to go get 1 million glucose and insulin tests. No, you could. I mean, I don't recommend the tolerance test with the multiple measuring, but you could get a fasting insulin. For many of you, even though you've been doing keto a bit, your insulin might still be high, and that will explain it. But anyway, you might be someone out there who has been racking your brain. Like, what else can I cut out? Do I need to eliminate my Splenda? Do I need to eliminate this? Or what if it's this or that? Maybe you are actually doing perfectly well, and it's just taking its sweet time. And that sucks. That's unfair. It's frustrating. It's disappointing. But let's look at 2 different ways that you could feel about this. You could look at it like, oh man, like, oh, it's going to take so long. Oh, it's so unfair. Like everyone else is losing so fast. Why me? What is going on? It's so you could wallow in the self-pity and the frustration, or you could shift that and say, oh, what a relief. Oh my, I thought something was wrong with me. Like I thought I was either doing it wrong, or like literally something is wrong with my body, that keto doesn't work for me, or I maybe have to like live on nothing but, I don't know, bacon. Like, not that that would be a problem, but no, it kind of would. But so you could actually feel relief and feel a lot of hope. Like, oh, thank goodness this actually is working, and I am going to lose this weight. I am going to get healthier. It's just going to take like 10 times longer than I wish it would. And the fact is, you don't have to choose between those points of view. You can hold both simultaneously. I've come to appreciate that you can hold 2 seemingly contradictory beliefs at the same time. That you can be relieved, you can feel hope, you can like just stay with the program and trust that it's going to work, and also be really annoyed that it's going to take so long. Both of those can be true. So I just really hope that gives you some hope. I hope it gives you hope. Like, that maybe you're not doing anything wrong. Maybe you don't need to pull more things out of your diet. Maybe you just need to stay the course. And we don't know for sure. Like, I don't know, because even if you get insulin tested now, the fasting insulin is a little iffy. It can be high for different reasons, and it's not the best to hang your hat on. It's more important to know what it's doing after a meal. I mean, you could do that. Most doctors won't even know how to help you do that, so I wouldn't recommend trying, but we don't know where you started from. So sometimes people come to me, like let's say first-time client, and they had that fasting insulin test, and maybe it was 17 or 22, which is, in my opinion, that's high. Even though it falls within that normal range, it's at the very high end. But we don't know where it was before keto. We don't know where it was 6 months ago or a year ago. 22 might already be cut in half, right? It might have been 44 6 months ago, right? It might have been 30 something. So we don't know where they were starting from. Point is, maybe you fall into that category. Now, the thing is, though, don't kid yourself. Like, again, at the beginning of this video, I said that what I was saying here assumes that you are actually sticking to keto, that you're not trailing off every few days and having carbs. Because if you do fall into this category of people whose bodies are just so stubborn, then keto does work, and it will work for you, but you have to be ultra, ultra strict all the time. You do not have the wiggle room for the occasional little treat or the occasional little thing that some other people might be able to get away with and still lose weight, right? Not everybody needs ultra, ultra strict keto to lose weight. I've shared this joke before. Did you hear about the woman who went on a keto diet? Her husband lost 20 pounds, but like when I was in the military, I knew guys, we would have to weigh in or do the fitness test or whatever. I knew guys that could just stop drinking soda and beer for 2 weeks and like lose 10 pounds. Now, we're talking about athletic 20-something-year-old guys, but still, were they on keto? No. So, but you are not one of those people. If you are in this situation, or you think you might be, where your body is just so reluctant to give up that fat or so severely insulin resistant, you need every second on plan you can get. You just don't have the luxury of stepping out to the carbs once in a while. Because every time you do, you are setting yourself back that much further. And you were already far back to begin with. You know what I mean? And it does suck. It's terrible. Like, it's unfair, but again, I also hope it gives you something to cling to. You know what I mean? Like a little mental and emotional lifeline to cling to. Because sometimes, and this is when I said that it was so useful for me to hear Jackie say all this as somebody who works with people. And most people who come to me are struggling, right? Because they're paying for my services. If they were getting the results they wanted on their own, why would they hire me? Like, why would they pay somebody to help them do keto if they were doing well on their own? So most likely, anyone who comes to me is not doing well on their own and they need help. And in wanting to give somebody answers and wanting to give somebody actionable advice, do this and this, stop doing that, try doing that, I too am guilty of like, well, I don't know, maybe you should take that out or try this, do this. Maybe the answer sometimes is you don't need to change anything. You just need to be really patient. You need to give this time. You need to stay the course. In medicine, there's a phrase called the tincture of time. There's like nature is the best healer, or time is the best healer. The tincture of time. So many issues that come up, not all certainly, many issues that pop up resolve on their own over time. They don't require treatment. You don't need to do anything. They just kind of go away on their own. And so you just got to ride it out and wait it out. this may be one of those things for those of you, again, whose bodies are just so, like keto is working. It's just much more slow. But if you know that, right, when I said it gives you something to cling to, if you know or you suspect that this is you, stick as closely as you can to keto. And by keto, I mean ultra strict. I don't mean farting around with your almond flour brownies and your cookies and your keto cereal. Like, no, keto ice cream is off the menu. So, check out the page 4 food list in the notes below, or the book I co-wrote, End Your Carb Confusion. The phase 1 food list is the same thing. That's the plan you could follow. So yes, I said the thing to cling to. If you know or suspect that this is your type of situation, then you will no longer feel frustrated when you're not losing weight every week or every 2 weeks, because you might just say, you know what? I finally understand that I'm not going to lose weight as quickly as everyone else. I'm going to lose it. This does work, and it is working. It's just working really, really, really slowly. And then I would recommend not getting on the scale at all. That's a whole separate issue. Like, just give it time. Give it a few months even. And you would expect over that amount of time that you might notice it in your clothing. You might notice, like women, I always, or men too, like rings start to fall off. Your face very often tells the tale first. When I look at people's before and after pictures, sometimes the face is the biggest change. And sometimes you'll see it in your face, honestly, before you see it anywhere else. So I honestly hope that gives you something to cling to. Like, because you understand that you're not going to lose weight all that quickly, you will no longer feel disappointed when you're not losing weight all that quickly, right? You'll no longer feel frustrated. You might be frustrated, but at least you understand why. It's not a mystery anymore. So remember, those got insulin in the 600s, unless she meant glucose. Then it was in the 300s, still insanely high, but it was so much better. So inside, good things were happening. Massively good things were happening. It was just going to take longer for the weight to catch up. And I see this all the time in clients and in people I coach, all the time, where people still maybe want to lose 20 or 50 or 80 pounds, but their A1C has dropped 6 points. They're off their insulin for type 2 diabetes. They're off blood pressure medicine. They're off antacids. They're off painkillers. If their blood pressure is normal, all this good stuff has happened, they still want to lose 80 pounds. Great. Then lose the 80 pounds over however long it takes, because you're already healthy on the inside. I'm going to finish before this video goes to 30 minutes. All right. Thanks for watching. Click that bell so you get notified when I bring you more Keto Without the Crazy, and subscribe to the channel while you're at it. See you next time.